Chapter 2. The shrill pulse of the alarm pulled me from the darkness of sleep. The space beside me an empty expanse of sheets. The blinds drew themselves soundlessly up as I shut off the holographic clock beside the bed, a strange feeling overcoming me. It was reminiscent of deja vu mixed with a fleeting impression of tall trees and dense moss beneath my feet. Images that felt so real, like unbroken memories. My mother had spoken of dreaming when I was a child. Stories that once visited us as we slept, like a movie played out in our unconscious mind, an endless alternate reality we could explore. I used to lie in bed at night and wish for one, but they never came. Something had happened a long time ago, a shift in our collective thoughts, a disconnect we could not define, and we had lost our ability to dream. But I still went to bed every night hoping for one to visit me. I closed my eyes, willing the visuals to clarify, but like smoke, they drifted through my fingers, intangible and impossible to grasp. What surfaced instead was Domine, and my mind momentarily wandered back to the last time I saw him. The sun's rays had slanted orange light through the trees, the rustling branches like a whisper, enticing me to stay. His face, shrouded in the long shadows of cedar and fern, the harbor of his deep brown eyes, soothing like sun-drenched earth, silently watching me as he stood outside his cabin. I missed him. Despite how hard I tried not to, I always missed him. I was perpetually caught between the structured layers of the life I chose and the one I had left behind so long ago. Pushing the thoughts of him from my mind, I rose from the bed and made my way into the bathroom, the tap on the sink springing to life as I ran my hands beneath it and splashed cold water on my face. "Mommy?" I turned to see Lilica standing in the doorway of the bedroom, her hair tousled against flushed cheeks. "Yes, hun?" I bent down and stared into her glassy eyes, my hand instinctively rising to her forehead. "My throat hurts. I don't feel good." Heat radiated against my hand, and a sinking weight coiled in my gut as I brushed back the strands of hair that had fallen into her eyes. "Looks like you have a little fever. Why don't we get you back into bed?" Lilica nodded and slowly shuffled back to her room as I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. Speaking Christina's name into the receiver, I waited for the connection. "Seren, what's up?" Her voice came out groggy and muffled. "I'm sorry to wake you, but I won't be able to come into the clinic today. Lilica's sick again." "Oh no, how bad is it?" The heavy tone of concern crept into her voice, mirroring the same sharp apprehension that pierced me like a knife whenever Lilica ran a fever. No matter how hard I tried to push it down, to swim past the fear, it was always there. The enemy we constantly battled. The fragility of living in a world surrounded by invisible threats we no longer had protection from. "I think she'll be fine. I have some supplies here at the house I can give her." "Oh, good." There was shuffling on her end, and then the sound of water running as she spoke quietly into the phone, concealing her voice. "Let me know if you need anything specific. I can drop it off for you." "Thanks, Christina. You think you'll be okay without me today?" "I'll be fine. Go take care of your little girl." With a sigh, I set the phone on the bedside table and slipped into the walk-in closet. Bending down, I retrieved the medical bag I kept hidden from Trendon, tucked discreetly behind the dresser, its edges worn and frayed. Zipping open the small leather pouch, I rooted through the various bottles, the glass clinking together like the wind chimes that used to hang outside my window as a child. A comforting melody that reminded me of my mother's gentle touch, and the herbal remedies she concocted late at night. Salves and tinctures doled out under her quiet and watchful eye, remedies holding secrets inside. The earth will always provide us with the medicine we need. Her words were a steady drumbeat I carried with me always, knowledge passed down from the generations of women who once lived among the sprawling green and rugged coastline of Wales. Medicine was all that was left of my lineage. I pulled out a small jar of marshmallow root and my bottle of immunity powder, a dehydrated blend of echinacea, black elderberry, and ginger root. Noticing my supplies were dwindling, I made a mental note to gather more from work. I had just placed a new order for herbs at the clinic, and was glad I would not have to navigate the risky black market exchange for another year. Padding into the kitchen, I pressed the hot water button on the blue brew dispenser. The humming blue light illuminated my skin as I reached up into the cabinet for a cup, and my eyes fell to Trendon's empty coffee mug, sitting on the counter beside the sink. The only evidence of him these days. His late nights and early mornings at work had reduced us to nothing but a handful of exchanges, like distant planets orbiting the same sun, and the saddest part of all was that I had begun to prefer it that way. Steam rose from the cup, the earthy scent enveloping me as I walked down the hall and poked my head into Lilica's room to find her asleep, her silken hair spread across the pillow. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I ran my fingers on her cheek. She stirred and opened her eyes, smiling up at me weakly. "Is your mommy tea ready?" "Yes, love." I lifted her head up against the pillows and handed her the cup. "You drink up all your mommy tea, and you'll feel better soon." "Will you tell me a story?" "Of course. What kind of story would you like to hear?" I stretched across the bed beside her, the aroma of soap from last night's bath still lingering on her skin. "Tell me a story about the time before." I smiled, remembering my mother's own stories whispered in the quiet of my childhood bedroom. "Okay, let's see. Once upon a time, when the world was full of artists and musicians, there was a little girl." "What are artists and musicians, Mommy? I forgot." I looked down at her, eyes wide and pressing, the past an endless galaxy she wanted to explore. "People who created things from their imagination." "What did they create?" "All sorts of things. They made beautiful paintings and sculptures, words and sounds that made you feel all kinds of emotions." "Like what I see in my book?" "Yeah, just like in your book." "Well, where are they now?" My breath stilled, and I glanced out the window into the haze of a scorched sky, remembering the soft melodic sounds my mother would make when I was a child, songs she hummed like whispers from a past now faded and lost. "I don't know." The glow of Lilica's night globe washed the room in the muted blue light. She lay asleep, limbs tangled in her sheets, as I ran the scanner of the thermometer across her forehead, my pulse a rapid thrum within my chest. "Please don't let it be too high." I breathed a sigh of relief as the holographic numbers flashed in front of me. Her fever had finally stabilized. She was going to be okay. Tucking the blankets around her, I placed a gentle kiss on her forehead and quietly closed her bedroom door, retreating into the kitchen. I stood at the counter, robotically placing the remains of dinner into airlock trays and watching as the fridge hissed open, its drawers sliding forward like a vacant command awaiting my submission. That feeling hit me again, the same one which had followed me around for years, gnawing at the corners of my mind, poised and ready to strike like a cornered animal. I was trapped. We all were. There was no color to paint upon our walls. The world was either black or white, with muted tones that matched the fire-scorched sky, and I longed for color. I longed for sound. I wanted to give my child something more, a song she could sing around herself. The silence within the house shuffled into the corners as the headlights of Trendon's vehicle spilled through the living room window, casting slanted shadows across the walls and startling me from my restless thoughts. The door opened quietly, bringing with it the smell of smoke as Trendon appeared in the entryway to the kitchen, his form swathed in the dark, imposing suit of his patrol uniform. Removing his tactical vest, he placed it in a locked closet as he did every night, away from the probing curiosity of Lilica's explorations. She'd seen him in his uniform only once. He had sat her on his lap, trying to explain to her that his uniform was to keep people safe, but the fear in his eyes were evident. There were only 3 corporate sectors allotted to us when we entered the workforce: healthcare, corporate retail, and civil service, all designed to keep the system moving perfectly in place. And Trendon had chosen civil service and directed the branch of checkpoints and curfew monitoring. He was a dark knight gliding across streets, his presence keeping us tucked away inside our homes, reminding us we were protected and looked after, like children seeking solace from lurking shadows. But it was only a thinly veiled illusion, a lie cloaked within the rigid grip of restriction. In the end, it was our own fear that imprisoned us. "How was work? You're home early." I leaned up against the counter, regarding him with a forced smile. "We had a new recruit today, so I gave him the rest of my night shift." Trendon ran his hand over his cropped, thinning hair, his jet black eyes flickering across the kitchen. "Where's dinner?" I just put it away, but I can warm some up for you in the oven if you like. Thanks. With a nod, he brushed past me, the space around us muted and dull around the edges. Both of us had grown mutually content with the cold, as whatever sun that had once sustained us grew further away from our sky, until there was nothing left but the shell of who we used to be. I couldn't even remember the last time we had touched each other. How was your day? The tidiness of his question twisted around the sound of a glass being placed on the counter. Well, Lilica had a fever this morning, so I stayed home with her. The beep of the warming oven sounded as it released its doors and awaited the food I had retrieved in the refrigerator. Sliding the plate of food into the oven, I stood back and stared at the glowing red coils that now illuminated the door. Oh. He perched himself at the table and pulled out his phone, fingers swiping away at the screen and bringing up the holographic image of the latest MCOR report. Please tell me she received her immunity enhancers this month. Of course she did. I folded my arms across my chest. She's fine now. Her fever broke a little while ago. Trendon didn't even look up from the image hovering in front of him, only nodded absent-mindedly as this monotone drone of an MCOR official filled our kitchen. Food shortages continue on the eastern seaboard. 2 underground resistors arrested today on charges of treason. I bit my lip, trying to block out the words and the chill that always overcame me whenever they sprang onto a screen. I detested the daily MCOR reports, but Trendon followed them religiously, his eyes glued to the hologram every night. I slid into the chair next to him, hoping to direct his attention away from the report. Well, Lilica's asleep, but you can pop your head in and say goodnight if you want. No, that's okay. That sharp sliver of contempt pricked me once more, and I dragged my gaze toward the darkness of the kitchen window. Trendon's lack of interest was a palpable force that swallowed up the air around me. I knew his work consumed so much of him, but whenever I tried to bring it up, he would only give me an irritated look, as if my remarks were only an annoying sound to be easily flung aside. A memory unearthed like a tarnished artifact, bitter and sweet. My body resting against a chair in the backyard, skin warm beneath late summer sunlight and the reprieve of a blue sky. My belly ripe, mind in repose, the smile on Trendon's face as he sat beside me. What happened to those days? Our marriage had once felt so easy, gliding effortlessly into place with his promise of security and a chance to finally start the family I had always longed for. But over the past few years, as his job stripped more of him away, he had become a stranger in his own house, navigating his parental role with a mixture of reluctance and duty, firmly upholding the rigid rules of the grid without question. And I found myself drifting further from him until I couldn't even recognize the man I had married anymore. We had become nothing more than a barren landscape, confined within the boundaries of mutual agreement and the constraints of compromise. In the end, had I only been too scared to risk a life with a man who was untamed, a man who made me feel wild? There was no room for wildness in this world. Okay, then, I sighed and pushed myself off the chair. I'm going to bed. Only silence answered back as I made my way down the hall and into our room. I stared at the bed, my eyes trailing over the immaculately folded corners, the crisp whiteness of the bed cover, like a barren field of snow. I had a sudden urge to rip away the sheets and toss them onto the floor, to expose the stains of our marriage buried within the fibers of the mattress, all the secrets I kept, the stifling constriction that screamed inside me. Gathering my nightgown and toothbrush, I slipped from the room and into Lilica's, closing the door to her bathroom and running the water into the sink. I had been sleeping in her room more and more lately, seeking comfort in the soothing rise and fall of her breath, her tiny body curled against mine, cocooned in a private world composed of only the two of us.